I will try to be done by 1:30, as was the plan for today. I just made a round through the different groups, and again I saw quite interesting discussions. Some of you really stuck to the questions you discussed yesterday. Some of you changed, I think even twice in the course of today, the research focus, and I'm curious to see how that's gonna end up. Again, if you take decisions, and that's the great thing about doing research and coming up with your own research project and your own data collection. The great thing is that you can do a lot of different things, and you have a lot of flexibility in doing different things, as long as you can argue, motivate, rationalize what you're doing, and you're transparent in why you took certain decisions. As long as you do that, many things are possible, and would still have a very scientific outlook. Have a very scientific outlook look to them. Of course, some things might be easier to publish in the end than other things, and some things might look more convincing than others. But as long as you're able to say, I'm sampling this in this way because I think for my research question that's the most appropriate since blah 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 blah. You know, you can take a lot of different decisions. And it's very hard. Some of you ask me, is this right? Is this correct? If you say it's the most appropriate, the most correct decision for what you want to do, yeah, it's probably correct. And that's what I like about especially this phase of doing research. There's a lot of creativity involved in this planning process. And then you can come up with a lot of different things, and the boundaries are very loose still. And at some point, you're the one who's fixing the boundaries and who's making things more concrete by taking decisions. And again, that's so nice when you do your own research. And especially when you collect your own data, because then some of these decisions are becoming. So again, try to summarize the discussions you had and the decisions you took on a couple of slides for the presentation on Friday. We're trying to build up this presentation for Friday as you see a bit, and I hope that's going to work also for the next few days. What I want to talk about now is a very different issue. Much less technical in a way, but to my mind a very important issue which usually is not really addressed in this type of classes, which is we'll be talking about research ethics. And normally, especially quantitative methods classes are very much focused on design, measurement, and so on and so forth. But I think this is an important part of reflecting on what we're doing, actually, in what we're doing. And it is not only that I'm thinking this is important, but we also see that in the funding scene and in the publication scene, this is becoming more and more important. So, and we look at a lot of regulations from different authorities in the European context in this presentation. But we see that many funding agencies now ask for ethical protocols, for reflections on ethical problems, and so on and so forth. And they're very strict with that. And you don't get clearance on research funding if you don't thoroughly provide reflections on research ethics. Journals ask you, if you want to publish an experimental study, the editor is going to ask you in many journals nowadays, where's your ethical clearance from your university? Did this go through an ethical review board? We later come to cases. There have been in the European context quite a number of cases of high-ranking people in academia who fabricated their data, who played around with their data in order to find certain things. And this is also part of research ethics and part of what we need to discuss, I think. And part of this is also making data publicly available, allowing other researchers to actually check your work. You know, that's what we should do. We should be open about what we, you know, we're doing good science, and that's the aim, to do good science and not to do shady things. So we should be able to send our data set to anyone out there, to send them our, whatever it is, SPSS syntax, data do file, R scripts, whatever we're using in terms of programs to analyze the data, and tell them, this is what we did, and this is the results. Now go ahead, try. And ideally, he's going to replicate those results. So that's all things that come into play when we talk about research ethics in a way. And all things that, at least, you know, I haven't been in this business for long, but I've been in the business for 15 years now or so. It's scary to say, it's only 14. And even in those 14 years, I have these ethical issues seen becoming much more important, and that's why I think it's important to discuss here. So just very briefly, what are ethics? Moral principles of right and wrong. They're not absolute, but they vary by person, by time, by place, maybe in competition with each other. You know, I'm not doing and I can't do the philosophy on ethics, and some of you might be much better at that than I am. What is research? Yeah, it's this disciplined inquiry that aims to contribute to body of knowledge or theory. Yeah, we've seen that in various ways yesterday, especially. What are research ethics then? We try to incorporate ethical principles into research practice. May involve also balance between principles and practice. You know, sometimes we could be very principled, but then we couldn't do our research. So we need to weigh the importance of ethical principles versus what we want to do in research practice. And that then applies to all stages of the process, from the planning process, research design, to data processing, results publication, and so on. Some of the principles, and some of these will come back again in various forms during the next 3/4 of an hour. Dignity, respect, care for others, honesty, integrity. This is all more dealing with your participants, with the people that take part in the research. Integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness. This is more about being transparent about the process maybe, and what you're doing and why you're doing things. Though it's hard to differentiate in that way. Again, interrupt me if anything is just unclear, but I'll walk basically through some of the different steps in the research process. And I'm doing so because that made a lot of sense to me to do. I'm doing so sometimes relating to frameworks that are used by big research funders. This, for instance, is the ESCR, the Economic and Social Research Council in the UK, funding a lot of research. And they, very early on already, I think, were quite clear about their ethical guidelines when it comes to funding social science research, economic and social science research. And some of the main features, some of these principles are still important to go through. I mean, responsibility for the conduct of research rests with the principal investigator. That is, if you do your own project, that is you. If you're working in a team, that might be someone else. But those people who have the funding to do a study and then come up with designs and so on and so forth, they're responsible for what they're doing here. And it's not the PhD student or the student assistant you're having in a project that might do a mistake here and there and might forget something. No, it's still your responsibility as a PI to take care of this. Responsibility for ensuring research is subject to ethical review, approval, and monitoring as with the research organizations seeking and holding an award with the ESRC and employing researchers. So what the ESRC says, and that's being implemented in many European countries at least, is that the research organizations, i.e. the universities, should have ethical review boards. And they should review the proposals and give clearance to those proposals. there's a ethical review board at this university, as far as I have heard. Interesting, nobody knows.
Yeah, we have it.
You have one, right?
Who takes care of all.
Yeah. So they're usually the ones who take care of this. Sometimes there's still countries where you don't have this implemented in every university. Sometimes you have countrywide ethical review boards, but it's not a funding organization. It's about decide who can decide. Ethical review should always be proportional to the potential risk, whether this involves primary or secondary data. There is, and we'll come to that, more risky and less risky research. And where I worked before I went to Vienna, we always said, come on, if we do a content analysis of newspaper content, do we really need ethical clearance for that? It's public data, we don't do anything bad to anyone. That could be a case of less risky research. And then my colleagues next door would do research on pornography and young people. That's pretty risky research, where you definitely need to have ethical clearance for what you want to do. We'll come to that in a second again. ESRC does not seek to impose a model arrangement, but will only fund research organizations with procedures in place which meet minimum requirements. That's again a very formal thing. So the ethical review board at the university should have some procedure in place how they do these things, and it shouldn't be just an ad hoc gathering of people coming together and saying this is fine. But that's usually the case. As part of ESRC decision-making, peer reviewers and assessors comment on ethical self-assessment. Boards and panels may set conditions. So indeed, when I'm reviewing for funding agencies nowadays, I'm explicitly asked to, in my review, state at least a paragraph about the ethical risks and the ethical considerations and how that was addressed in the proposal that I'm reviewing. And that happens very frequently, and people have very different opinions on some research with more than minimal risk. So especially in my area, working with young people, with children especially, is a very sensitive issue. Also, reviewers might having various opinions really, which is correct. Funds meant only when institution confirms project has started with ethical approvals have been obtained, but that's technical again. And I had that in some project, we didn't have a good review board, we needed to go to the Spanish National Ethical Review Board, which this cost us a bit of money, and the funding agency actually gave us a bit of additional money to get that ethical clearance. Breaches of good ethical practice in ESRC-funded research will be treated as a very serious matter by the Council. And that's what we increasingly see. That goes as far as demanding money back that you might have already spent on a survey or an experiment. So this is stuff that is, it's very easy to write that little paragraph in a research proposal on research ethics and then do whatever you want to do. But if they figure out, and if you want to publish those results, so eventually they might figure out what happened. That's problematic. The Social Research Association Ethics Guidelines. Again, another one. Good ethical practice, social research, Title 2. Why do we do this? Protect research subjects. Protect those people that we're working with and that we're so dependent on in terms of getting data. Ensure high quality research. Again, transparency and things like that. Reassure funders. You're not giving millions and millions away to things that do shady projects that maybe shouldn't be done. Help to maintain the good reputation of our sector, which is the academic sector. And if we do a lot of shady things, then society, politics might look at us start to look at us with different eyes. And sometimes we'll come to an example of that in a second. Comply with legislation. Sometimes we're just not allowed to do that. we're not allowed to de-anonymize data when we said we would only use anonymity. General factors again, first and foremost, and that's the basic, the most important thing I think in all research ethics frameworks, do no harm, physical or psychological, to human subjects. Now we can discuss at length what harm is. You know, that might range from feeling a little uncomfortable when answering a certain question about a subject that you're not very familiar with or that you don't want to talk about, to real physical harm in certain experimental settings where people attach things to your body and so on. I had a very interesting discussion last week only with a colleague who's doing research, experimental research on the perception of horror movies. You know? Is it actually, there are a lot of people who don't like to watch horror movies. And is it actually okay to put those people into a lab and show them clips of a horror movie? They might, that might cause more than psychological distress, you know, that might cause physical distress in such a situation. So do no harm to your human subjects. Privacy, anonymity and confidentiality must be ensured for the human subjects. Again, that sounds trivial and we all think that's easy to do. We'll come to online research in a second. And how you know, sometimes we think, okay, then we, what did I have lately? So I'm sometimes asked to answer surveys among academia, right? And then the survey asked my age, my level of in the profession, my field of study, and my gender. You know, any smart person would very quickly know that that's me who answered those questions. It's my university, my field, my age, my gender. Must be me, and a professor. And there's not a lot around, so it must be me. You know, it didn't feel quite good to actually answer that survey. Lack of informed consent from research participants. People that we ask, people that participate in surveys, more importantly in experiments, must consent to do so. And must be, and we'll look at consent forms in a second, must be made aware of what they're doing and what they're engaging in and what their rights are when they participate in the study. And we need to make sure that that's going to happen. Yeah?
I think this is when we about proper informed consent. Like I have experience like when we go for some economic survey, sociology survey, and especially in villages.
Yeah.
The first question they'll ask to us is that whether some government schemes,
whether some what?
Some government subsidies or schemes are done.
Yeah.
So what? So friends or even me, I did. Yeah, we are doing for the government, so give us the data. Which is unethical, I guess. But otherwise, they don't respond. Okay, what is the use of giving you the information? How do you navigate it, right? The response rate or the...
So the fact that we told them that it's government-funded survey...
No, maybe we set the... we'll give data to our agencies and everything. Maybe something will come out, we're not so sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you don't say those words, they will use it. Like say, what is the use of giving you the sitting with you and giving you the...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and in a way these informed consent forms can also be a purpose to make people participate, to tell them it is important that you participate because eventually we can come to a better understanding of our democratic system or the positioning of certain classes in society and how that can be improved or things like that. So indeed, this informed consent form is one thing is to tell them what they're getting into, but you can also tell them what the benefits are of participating in the study. Yeah, good point.
The approach can easily be seen as unethical because they disguise themselves to be government. Somebody coming from government agency to conduct the research.
Yeah, I mean, it is. You shouldn't do it if that's not the purpose of the survey, right? You should only tell them what the benefits are if there are potential benefits.
It would be like they just say that we are preparing this project report and we are submitting it to the government, or there would be a research implication which would be taken care and do that.
If that helps them? Yeah.
They do the same thing but in separate.
Yeah. When it comes to experimental research, and the use of deception is a big issue. What we do in experiments, as we'll see on Thursday, is we manipulate information. We give people different versions of different types of situations, which are not true, really. So we deceive them.
Also, if we taking an interview and without informing the participant, we record the interview.
That's not fine. That should be an informed consent, actually. That you tell them that you're recording an interview. Deception is really about experiments. Come to that in a second. And then it's about analysis and reporting. How do you treat the data? What do you do with the data? How do you report the results? And it's transparent. That's the first. Yeah.
Because they would give out responsibility in looking at the So would that be considered as informed consent or
It's an incentive. So, of course, I mean, all of us, many of us are working with incentives. So it's very hard to get participants for studies if you don't give something back. Sometimes it works that you tell them that we're going to improve democracy, but often it's not a good incentive for many people. So you pay people money. Yeah. And that's fine, as long as that's, again, transparent to thanks so much. You still tell them what the survey is about and what their rights are while doing a survey, and then you also tell them if you participate, we give you movie tickets or whatever, and then they might do that. But it's their free will to do. I mean, of course, there's a good incentive to participate than movie tickets, but they could still say no, I don't want to, and that's important. Let's talk a bit more about the first three aspects here, I think, which relates to the use of human subjects. So human subject is a living individual about whom an investigator conducting research obtains data through intervention or interaction with the individual or identifiable private information. And if you use human subjects, we shouldn't just use human subjects in research for fun, because we always disturb their lives. Even if they do a very simple survey, we take 10 minutes of their time. So it shouldn't just be for fun, but we should do research that has some positive benefit for academia and ideally for society, maybe for the individual as yourself. It's just like if we come to animals somewhere. You don't torture animals just for fun, but ideally to improve medical knowledge, for instance, which is an area where it's still done. All the participants' values and decisions should be respected. So all types of answers should be respected, all types of decisions that they take during the process, they can stop at any time. If you take a survey, an experiment, the participant has the right to walk out at any time. And you need to tell them. All people should be treated equally, but that's quite common sense. So general principles for these human subjects. Voluntary participation. We can force no one to participate in a research project. Every participation is voluntary. We can use incentives to make it more likely that people participate, but it is voluntary. And if they don't participate, we don't shout at them, we don't tell them bad names. It's just fine if they don't want to. Yeah?